to Autumn by John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him had a load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the moss cottage trees and fill off fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shell with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more, later flowers for the bees until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoe'er seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by a winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed by the fume of poppies while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives and dies. Full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft a redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Anything I missed there?
Nope.
Okay. So I want to go through this stanza by stanza, but I want to I don't want to repeat everything that we were just saying before. Sure. So I just want to highlight things a little bit more. So at the beginning, right, it's interesting, he's speaking, it is to Autumn, right? It's not ode on a Grecian, or it's not on Autumn, again, and he's speaking directly to her, apostrophizing her, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, talking to her. And so Keats is in this poem, but he never actually kind of appears. He's kind of an interesting audience that seems almost detached in some ways from what he's seeing. And I love particularly in this beginning, the first stanza, that the way he uses language and really so many of the resources of language, syntax, diction, to really get this idea of fullness and, in fact, of overbrimming, right? So we've got filling all fruit with ripeness to the core, swell the gourd, plump the hazel shell. You look at these verbs, right? Set budding more and still more. I'm actually struck, this is a new kind of resonance for me. We actually just had our first harvest of honey from 2 hives that I've been keeping. Got 6 gallons of honey. Wow. And, there is that sense, it's such a lovely image that he ends this first stanza with, of, that the bees who just work like mad, all summer, they must think, boy, it's another hot day, I got to fill more of these things, and just that sense of it's got to come to an end. There's this sense of inevitability. Things are as full as they could possibly be. You have very much, he's so good at weight, which is a difficult thing. Remember that what soft incense hangs upon the boughs in the Nightingale Ode, and it's the same idea here. This you get the image of branches bending with huge apples, and shells and gourds about to break open, and so these images of plenitude, and this really sets him up for this idea of that the harvest has to happen. It's interesting that particularly coming off of Urn, where that idea that you have something that is frozen, right? So heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. The happy boughs that never can shed your leaves, right? This idea that that this is to be admired in a work of art, that something is permanent and that it cannot go away. I mean, here it is the opposite, because autumn as a season is seen as being it has to happen. There is no freezing it, and there's no sense of, oh, that's great because we can freeze it here. the only option to the harvest is bursting and rotting, and that's not what you want to do. And then, and of course, also in the first stanza, the fact that it's one sentence. I mean, you can make an argument because he has a number of end stops that are semicolons, and you could end the sentence there, but you don't have to. And over and over again, he's doing this. He's not end stopping a line like in the third, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit. There's the sense of there's more to say. There's more in the image than the line can contain.
So the form of these stanzas is kind of imitating the content of this harvest.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, and then in the second stanza, which is probably kind of the most famous thing about this poem that people tend to identify, is this idea of autumn as a woman, and you have these lines that are just so extraordinary, right? Thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind. What a fantastic images here of the wind that is gentle enough so that you can winnow, but strong enough so that it'll blow some of the husks away, and that you can separate the kernel from the shell. And you have this image of autumn as a woman with this long hair kind of lifting up, and holding up in the air. There's this wonderful kind of suspension that's taking place there. And what's happening in the course of this stanza is that autumn is engaged in its own harvest. There's this sense that autumn is capturing and holding and preserving everything that has been growing throughout the season, so that you have engaged in storing things in a granary of reaping and so on. But actually, autumn in these sort of snapshot moments throughout the stanza is not actually doing these things. It's actually caught in a moment of rest. So autumn is sitting careless on a granary floor. It's on a half-reed furrow, but it is drowsed by the fume of poppies and sound asleep. Right? And so it is sparing the next swath as opposed to actually doing the reaping. And even though it is gleaning the fields, it is actually keeping those gleanings steady with thy laden head. So the idea is that autumn has filled a receptacle of some sort and is preserving and keeping these things. So the first stanza too, when you go back and look at time and how time is I think it's pretty clear that we're moving through the season, but we're also moving through the day, because in the first stanza we're talking about the maturing sun, right? And early in the season. The second stanza is kind of the midday. It's the noon stanza. And so this is where autumn is kind of taking a nap in the middle of the day. And as these images go through, it's getting more and more towards the end of the season, because the actions of the harvester are progressing in time as well. It really is just extraordinary the way that it is constructed. And in a lot of ways, this poem is more like a song or a symphony than it is like an argument, like a philosophical argument. It's a series of orchestrated images that are working together, that are progressing and showing this sort of the inevitability and the tremendous appeal of a process that's unfolding kind of before our eyes. And then what I think of as being, the ultimate heroic line of this poem is the one that begins the third stanza. Where the songs of spring, where are they? And then think not of them, thou hast thy music too, right? It is here that, as far